You're only really a short distance from Carrickmore, and behind the quarry here, the village would be about 200 yards from the top of the quarry. We are approaching Carrickmore now up from the foot of the rock.
What do you call it again?
That's the foot of the rock road.
Right.
It's used as a bypass. It comes in the Donegal Bridge, goes right past the football field and comes out over at the cement road. But as you can see, we're getting up here right onto the rock. And that rock there has been quarried for very many years, longer than I can remember, and longer than most of the older people can remember. It started off as a small quarry down there where the big breakers are. Now they have penetrated right into the rock.
Would this have been an early part of the quarry in here?
There used to be a house here. There used to be a couple of houses here. Mickey McKeever's house used to be over there near where that pit is. And Joe Monroe's house used to be over, see where about that tanker is. But when the quarry was extended, they built a house for Joe Monroe. I mean, the quarry owner built a house for Joe Monroe down there below the road. That's his bungalow down below the road there. And his property was removed from here. But as you can see, there has been quarrying going on here for ages. Those big billows there, those big pits, is waste material that has been dumped. And that's the remains of old machinery and that they have used. There was also somewhere in this area here a mass rock, and there's a certain amount of concern at local level when it was removed as part of the quarrying. Now, as you can see, we are approaching Carrickmore. It has been wired in here and is now controlled by the Public Monuments Department. If you're expecting something very large, very extensive, you may be a wee bit disappointed. But as you can see, it consists of a stone circle, and this here is the detail. Carrickmore. Relic means a graveyard. Naman of the woman. Translated into English, it is woman's graveyard. Woman's graveyard. Now, the old tradition was that a certain woman had a dispute with St. Columkill, and St. Columkill asked her who the father of the child was, and she was reputed to have said Columkill, whereupon Columkill banished her from the church and said that her remains were to be buried in a place where she couldn't see the Catholic Church or she couldn't hear the bell ringing, and she travelled down in this direction here, and this was reputed to have been her graveyard. That is the old tradition. There are certain myths and legends about it. However, the archaeologists and people who have come to study it today aren't absolutely sure what it is. They can put forward several theories, certain theories. Some of them believe that it was a woman's convent, a special place for women. Like that was St. Columkill's up on the rock, up beside where we were at the start.
Yes.
That's where St. Columkill, or one of his friends, one of his disciples, one of his colleagues, formed the first monastic settlement. Well, some of the archaeologists believe that this may have been a woman's cell here. But also part of the local tradition is that no living woman or no dead man is allowed inside that circle.
Does that... do there still
no
woman would come up here?
No living woman would go inside there, and obviously you get no dead men in either. But to find out exactly what it would be, you would need to have the archaeologists, because
excavate it.
You need to have Claire Foley, who is an expert in these matters, told me that it would need to be dug, and that would entail an awful lot of work and an awful lot of money. But the older people remembered women being buried in there.
Is that right? Even
into modern times. And what apparently they got consecrated clay from the graveyard up above, and you know when the priest puts down the consecrated clay there in a burial, that clay was taken down here, and the people were buried there. And there was
what was the idea of burying here? Did you have to have any?
You see, the tradition was to bury close to a monastic settlement. And when we get up to the graveyard, up to the Carrickmore graveyard, you will see that there actually were graves within the church area. In fact, in the present church in Carrickmore, what we call the Famine Church, Canon Vincent is buried within the confines of the church, within the church. That's an old Christian tradition to bury them.
It wasn't a tradition that had to be a woman of ill repute or anything to be. You were
no!
up here
They would want to be buried either in or as close to the monastic settlement as possible.
Yeah.
So they considered it a very, very pious, a very holy thing to be buried here. But one wag tells the story that he remembered being at a burial here.
Yeah.
And the man who was performing the ceremonies was a man called Donegal. And he could remember your man was pronouncing the words over the dead woman. And he said, "Menta homo quia pulvis est," if you remember the Latin, if you ever served Mass.
I never served Mass.
And he was smoking a pipe. And one of the local wags said to him, "I see your reverends, you take a pull of the pipe. I'll wait to hell you..." I'll not tell you what he said.
Yeah.
These are
Part of our foreign occupation.
the army of occupation which frequent these parts. In fact, these wires have been tramped down, but I see they have been replaced again.
By the army.
Well, no, the local people will be very, very hesitant to interfere with this whatsoever. You can come inside the gate here and you see some of the stones that are standing up. Obviously have been set in place. It's quite safe for us to go inside. As you can see, lots of those stones obviously have been stood up. Like that's an unusual looking stone. It's a stone that's quite different from all the other stones. But I couldn't tell you what it was, but it looks almost like a gravestone. And you can see that even inside the outer ring there's a kind of a second ring there.
Yes, there is.
And then there are big stones like that there standing up in the middle. But what the archaeologists tell me is that it would be difficult to know which is the original stone and which has maybe the farmers maybe built up stones up around the edge. But that's just like a local ditch that has been built there, you know, just like the rest of the ditches around there.
And there was no excavation ever done here?
No,
it hadn't been tampered with it, huh?
No, and there's no other graveyard, woman's graveyard like this in Ireland. I think Claire Foley said in the county Sligo there's a similar type graveyard there, a woman's graveyard. Like you haven't really heard of a woman's graveyard?
No, I never heard of one before. There's quite a view from up here, isn't it?
Well, the other thing about the monastic settlement, they would pick a very, very dominant position where they could have a view of the whole country. But if you can imagine in cold weather and bad weather here, it would be very, very harsh and very bitter. And that they picked the harshest place they could possibly get.
For penance?
Aye, as a form of penance.
Yeah.
Self-sacrifice. You're looking out there towards that Bernice Glen. If you know there, then that would be the 6 Mile Cross area over there. And that's that big, the round hill that you can see away there in the very distance with the television mast on it. That is the Brocher Mountain, below Trillick.
But then below Trillick.
That's right.
You have some view from here already.
Those bushes over there on that side there, that's Mullislin Gap. As you go towards Oma.
Oh, way in the Oma direction, yeah.
And if you moved on down here, you can actually see Mullaharn. You'll probably be familiar with the view of Mullaharn.
It's quite stormy up here, isn't it?
Oh, it is. But it's pleasant. That, of course, is you can see the football field there. More football field. And Carrickmore.
When you see all these rocks around here, you'd wonder how they ever used it as a burial ground at all.
Well, even up where we do bury, it's still a very, very rocky position.
Is that right? The graves are all shallow in it, are they?
Well, no, they do remove the rocks, but you know, on Carrickmore means the big rock.
Yeah.
And this is the same outcrop of rock you can see here. You know that, and right on up. When we go up to the graveyard, I'll take you up on Mullinalap, which is there's a bed and there's a well and there's a chair. St Columbkill's bed, St Columbkill's well, and his chair. It's right up over. It'll be the origin of the place, because again they picked the highest position and the most inhospitable place they could find.
Good, yeah. maybe we'll go up there now and have a look at it.
The whole story's there, John, isn't it? On an Irish means the woman's graveyard. Set on this rocky hill overlooking the valley of the Camoan River, Carrickmore lies about 2/3 of a mile southwest of Termonrock at Carrickmore, the site of an early monastery. It is the most unusual site, a graveyard traditionally reserved for a woman. It is a small squarish enclosure surrounded by a tumbled wall, now mainly grass grown. The small mounds and rough stones must mark the position of the graves, and there is just one stone with a simple cross in the southern part of the enclosure. The original entrance was on the west side, where a clear gap can be seen. Traditionally, St Columba ordered a woman of ill repute to be buried out of earshot of his bell, and this was the spot distant from Termonrock. But another tradition tells how particularly a holy woman asked to be buried in Carrickmore. There were special graveyards for slain men and children near Termonrock, and a burial place for suicides somewhere near Carrickmore. It is difficult to be sure why the practice of separate burial for women grew up and how old this graveyard is. There is a women's graveyard at the island monastery of Inishmurray in County Sligo, and on Iona, St Columba's Scottish base. Women were excluded from the main graveyard and buried at the nunnery. At some early monasteries, women were very strictly excluded, so perhaps Carrickmore originated as a graveyard outside the monastery for the womenfolk of the monastic tenants, or perhaps a traditionally holy woman had a hermitage on this rocky spot, and after her death it is favoured for women's burials. We cannot say with certainty whether Carrickmore is a few hundred years old or over 1,000, but there is no other site like it in the north. One last tradition before you go in, that no dead man or living woman should ever enter Carrickmore. There in Taggart, Brian McGurk, in memory of Dean Brian McGurk, Vicar General of Blessed Oliver Plunkett, born in this parish in 1622, imprisoned and died in Armagh Jail in 1713, at the age of something like 94. 62 from 62 would be 78, 88 and 3 would be 90, 91. He died in Armagh Jail, 91 years of age. So things haven't changed all that terribly much, have they?
That was a big age to be in jail, wasn't it?
Well, he was native to this parish, and as you can see there, he was a dean and vicar of Blessed Oliver Plunkett. And you know that Blessed Oliver Plunkett was executed, and he died in prison in 1713 at the age of 91. And it's appropriate enough that he should be Dean McGurk, because the name of the parish is Termon McGurk, and it means the sanctuary of the McGurks.
That's the translation.
That is Charman means the sanctuary. Our parish journal is known as Charman, the sanctuary, and that's what we took it from. But how it got that name, the McGurks were supposed to have been master builders, and they befriended Columkill in the construction of the initial church, and rather than pay them money, he made them eranachs. He gave them certain privileges, and they always have been associated with the church lands. There were some like 16, 17 town lands in the parish of Termon McGurk, and very many of the McGurk families were influential. And even in the Hearth Roll tax in the 1600s, quite a few of the McGurks feature as having certain town lands. They were the men, they were the important men in those town lands. And sorry.
Would this be the site of the original church here as well?
This is not the site of the original church, but I'll show you as we go up there. I'll show you where the original church was. Up here, if you point up in that direction up there, you'll see that is Mullinalap. and that means the summit of the bed. And on that there you will see St Columkill's bed, and that is the big rock that gives Carrickmore's name on Carrickmore, the big rock. That's what the translation of that is. And it is believed that St Columkill, or one of his friends, came and established a monastery here, and again they picked the most inhospitable place that they could find, and one that overlooked the whole countryside, and that would be as a form of penance and as a form of self-denial. And the initial church is reputed to have been up somewhere in the centre of the graveyard, which we'll show you as we go along. This church that you're looking at here was built, it's known as the Famine Church, and was built by Canon Vincent and completed in 1846, and you'll see the plaque over here on the wall. Now, it has been renovated, as you can see, recently, and it's in absolutely marvellous condition. That piece there in the sandstone, those are Carlin stone, Carlin sandstone, Carlin up near Dungannon. That's where that sandstone was supposed to have come from. The rest of it is built of field stones and ordinary stones, and has been plastered over. The plaster was stripped off and replastered and repainted. The tower and all that sandstone was sandblasted in the recent renovations. But if you look, if you could focus on that plaque there over the front door, it says erected by the Very Reverend Canon Vincent, AD 1846. Now you can imagine the achievement that was. 1845, the famine, and yet Canon Vincent could muster enough support and enough money to have this here constructed.
During such hard times.
During such hard time. And he has built, you'll see, if you go inside the church, there's a plaque to Canon Vincent and a few other priests who are buried within the confines of the church. If you want to go inside later on, or maybe you want to go inside now.
When was this church rededicated again? Or
Like a month, 2 months ago.
2 months ago?
I can find a reason. Definitely. These are all native born priests, Father McKeithney, Father Dominic Grugan. But Canon Vincent there gets pride of place. He was parish priest here for 38 years, and he died on the 7th of December 1874, the 96th year of his age. Imagine living that.
He's a big age, wasn't he?
After having served as parish priest here for 38 years. Now, the Historical Society had that plaque put on very, very recently with when the church was rededicated again. But in the olden days, they used the altar.
A side altar?
Yeah, there's a side altar here, and there's a side altar over on the far side. But there used to be a plaque there, marble plaques on the wall, but they were removed in an earlier
What did it cost to renovate this church, this particular?
one. I just couldn't tell you that. These stained glass windows, it used to be, it is the traditional cruciform shape, you know, it's the form of a cross. That's the central aisle, and then the two side aisles, and then they used to have the two side altars there. And that was known as the old gallery, and that is the new gallery. But then this third gallery was put on in this reconstruction. That third gallery was added, and it gives it, you know, a more complete appearance.
Was this stained glass window put in this stage, or was it always here?
That stained glass window's in for a long time. The money was donated by the Toll Brothers in New York. The altar was brought forward slightly. The altar rails used to be along there. Up until comparatively recently, they have been removed. The altar has been changed. Those two, St Columba and St Patrick, those two stained glass windows used to be higher up, but when the gallery
was gone,
they were dropped. Stations of the cross used to be round the walls, and this recent redecoration, recent works, they were brought out and put on the front of the gallery, which brings them into focus. When you see the lights, if we had a plan, I could have got the lights on here. The lighting is absolutely fantastic. The ceiling was designed by Donald Duffy, who was the foreman on the site.
It's a fine ceiling,
It's
isn't
a
it?
marvellous ceiling. That was a flat ceiling before, and I like 3 foot rough on a flat ceiling. But it was given good character, and great pattern, great design, and the lighting, which which has been introduced. George Allison was responsible for lighting. The main contractor was Brendan Lauren, who did Barra Church as well, you know.
Where's he from?
Down the road here.
He's from the parish.
Yes, he did Barra. He built that new chapel in Barra and the new one in Loch Macrory, and he did the redecoration of that one in Carrickmore. He also did the one in Caledon. Those stairs and all were put on there in the recent works. And that this board was out here.
Money will this church seat now?
I'm sure it would seat 1,000, would it?
It's very big, you know.
Isn't it big and roomy? Mm-hmm. Nice and open. This is all new here. And again, he's incorporated the ceiling in here as well. Gives it great warmth. It's modern at the same time it blends in with the old quality of the church.
And these will be two new stained glass.
These are two new stained glass windows. There wasn't any, that door opened right onto the yard here.
Onto the yard, there never was a porch, you know.
No. But it gives a great balance. If you're looking for symmetry, you see you have the same thing over there. And then this here blends in nicely with it. There used to be a confessional box there, but that confessional box is gone. And the station cross used to be up around the walls here.
So it's a fine.
Two other priests who have been buried within the confines of the church. He was a parish priest here, 1875 to 1880, 5 years. And this John Neal, I think he served in Donegal Island.
And what about these tools? You were telling me that donated the money for the stained glass windows. How much known of them?
Oh, I know, wealthy men in New York. That used to be quite customary. You see, the parish priest would get people to sponsor the seats. I remember in the old church there, each family had their seat. In other words, you could buy a seat. So they asked for donations, and various people had donated money for seats, for windows. There used to be plaques along the side of the wall there as well. Maybe if we come upstairs, we might even get a better shot of the altar in that big stained glass window. What's that step there? You see, if you notice down in the bottom corner it says, in memory of Terence Toad.
Where's that, Paddy?
Down in the bottom corner of the stained glass window.
Bottom right?
Bottom left.
Bottom left.
It says, in memory of Terence Toad, deceased, R.I.P. You see that there?
Yeah, I've got it.
Well, that was our father. And they've provided the money for that there.
What where you are in this church, you have a great view of the altar, haven't you?
Even up to the very, very back. Even up at the back. Well, that was what the parish priest was looking for. And one of the reasons, or one of the ways he achieved that, was by bringing the altar forward. So the altar really used to be back against the marble there at the back.
You wouldn't have seen it from here.
No, well, this gallery didn't exist. But the parish priest wanted to be able to see all members of the congregation at all times. Now the choir sits here. The choir sits here. The choir used to be in the old gallery. That was known as the old gallery. That used to be new as the new gallery. This now is the new gallery. That'll be the old, I don't know what we'll define it. You may remember Big Father Hughes, that's his...
He was a famous man in the parish.
He was a famous man in the parish, and that's the last parish priest we had. He formerly a parish priest in Ballygolly, Father Tracy, Father Peter Tracy.
Is that Father Tracy's grave there?
That's Father Tracy's grave there. That, believe it or not, used to be the site of the old school, one of the first schools here that was developed in the late 1820s, you know, when it was possible for Catholics to have schools again. And
After the hedgerow school?
That's right, after the head school.
Yeah.
And there was a wee school there up until this renovation job. That was taken away, and that now has become the part of the priest's graveyard. Over there used to be the site of the school that was built in 1903, and that was taken away and made room for a car park there.
Was it only taken away recently too?
It was taken away at the same time.
Same time?
Well, it hadn't been used for the last 10 or 20 years, and it got...
It's a pity this old one was taken away.
Well, and you see, it was the reason they said it was taken away, it was blocking the view of the church. There's a wee old building, and there wasn't really much you could do with it.
Is that right? It wasn't worth restoring or anything?
Well, it might have been, but it would have cost an awful lot of money. But that church there now, they said that this part of the stone for building that church came out of an old building, which was an earlier church over in the middle of the graveyard.
That's prior to 1846.
Well, there was one in between. Maybe a couple in between, but I'll show you when that was at the minute. See, well, let's come over here. The church that existed prior to this was reputed to have been in this area, and some people believe that that wall there was part of the earlier church. See that part of that old part of the wall?
Yes.
And you know it comes over to there and then it stops and then there's a new wall there. Well, some people believe that that there was part of the church that existed prior to the 1846, prior to the Famine Church.
It's possible, I suppose, okay.
Now, this arch here around the corner, some people believe that that was an entrance to an earlier church, that arch there. But from having examined it, local people say, or certain experts say, that arch has been rebuilt.
It's been taken from the old church?
No, whether that is part of an existing arch or not, they don't know, but you can see there's a different colour stone in there in the middle of it there, you see, on the right hand side of the arch. So they're not absolutely sure, but somewhere in that area there was a church which existed prior to this one here. This one here, 1846 one replaced it. Now, if you could point your camera up there at that head up on the side of the tower.
We're going up near the arch here, just a wee bit first.
Or even over in here, you might get a better shot of it. It is, that head there on the side of the tower, it is believed that it was incorporated from an earlier building or from an earlier monument, and that was quite customary to include heads like that there into buildings, either from an earlier building or just as part of the building itself.
It was usually a bit of the handiwork of one of the better stone masons on the job,
right.
wasn't it? It was his sort of trademark.
That's right, that's right. Now, when that, I have photographs taken now when that church was stripped, and the stone that had been used there, a lot of people were in favour of having it pointed, but it wasn't built to be pointed. It was like that kind of a wall there, and you couldn't...
Random rubble type.
That's right, that's right. And there was a variety of kinds of stones, field stones and sandstones and everything.
Yeah.
So they plastered over it and painted, but the pity is that the whole thing wasn't done with that sandstone. But then people believe that sandstone's very soft, and you can see that the sandstone itself there is wearing away. Not Harry Mullen, I think. Harry's still at the post office, is he?
Oh, he is, yeah. He's in the prom then, or whatever.
Sure you Francie Hurston's grave and that, don't you? Remember Francie Hurston?
Died of hunger strike.
Oh no, well, it'd be the brother.
Oh, the brother. What's this happened, that fella?
He died, I suppose the critter was just pressure, you know. There's some very old headstones there, which we maybe have there, 1790 something. There you go. Might have a look at them later on. You're actually looking at that rectangular area there. you're looking at where one of the earliest churches existed. Now, it might have been, see, after the Reformation, the Protestant churches, the Protestant powers took over existing Catholic sites, and for a time the Protestant church existed here. And there was a building here in my memory. I remember the stumps of old buildings that were there. Now, that might have been the existing Catholic church that had been taken over, or it might have been something that they improved upon or added to. Nobody is absolutely sure, you only can theorise about it. But a church did exist in this area here. Now, when that grave there was been opened, the wall along there of this earlier church was exposed.
Is that right?
Right there. Now, over here as well. That is the side wall of the church. In other words, that's that side of it. And it was on up to along here.
There's still traces of it all.
Oh, there are. That's part of the wall there, and that is the bottom part of it. Now, that is this side of it, you see. So we have got the bottom side, we have got this side of it, and we have got that side of it. And it went on up to somewhere, when those, you see those McGurk graves up there?
Yeah.
When those were, there are the remains of buildings up there. Now, the expert, Claire Foley, who's an archaeologist, tells us that from the raised appearance of the cemetery here, it tells them that this place here has been used as a church and a burial ground for centuries. And they believe that its human remains have raised the ground up. Yeah. If you look at the graveyard down there, you know, it's rising up here, and it's rising up into the centre. And that stems from what I was talking about earlier on there. People wanting to be buried within the confines of the church, or if not, as close as possible to the walls.
Convenient, I don't know, yeah.
And that was the tradition, that was the tendency to build in the church, and the special people, the special priests, the very, very holy people would be buried inside the church, and then the other people would be buried outside the walls. And for that reason, this has been used as a cemetery for centuries.
Over 1,000 years.
Over 1,000 years at least. This is the very oldest part of the graveyard, which leads people to believe that this is where the earliest church.
This was outside the walls of the earliest church, yeah?
This would be the actual area. Now, it was a monastic settlement, which would mean that they would build beehive huts and there'd be a central place of worship. But if you ever saw pictures of the early monastic settlements, they wouldn't be elaborate stone buildings. There would be huts built with wattle and heather and that type of stuff. So, for that reason, there would be no archaeological evidence that they existed. But the archaeologists believe that since this is the oldest part of the graveyard, that this is probably where the first church was built. Now, this rock over here, Mullinalop, if they choose that as a place of prayer and penance, well, they might seek a place of some shelter, say for their church, and their huts in which they would live and sleep.
Yeah.
So they believe that this may have been the area, and a lot of the people digging graves have found old stone remains, which leads them to believe that this was the site of the earliest possible church. Now, there's some very old headstones. This is reputed to be a very old one here. And again, you can see the head on it there, and you can see those triangular things at each side of it. Each side of the head. Yes. And that's the old, well, it's the Christians adopted it, but it was old. It stretches back even to pagan times, where they would superimpose a head on a stone like that there. The old stone over against the wall is a very, very old example as well. There used to be big flat stones that lay and they stood up on feet. You can see there, I can see 1797 on that there, but there are dates even before that. I just can't pick them out at the minute, but that was a very, very old headstone. Unfortunately, a lot of those older headstones are being replaced with modern headstones like this here, and it's quite normal that families will want to put up headstones for their parents and their dear ones, but they're trying to encourage them to take the old stones and prop them up against the wall like that.
I often thought it was a great pity that there wasn't a bit of money spent on re-chiseling out the original lettering on it, you know, before it gets obliterated altogether.
That's right. Well, you are in a very, very old part of the graveyard, and you can see now that there might even have been an old building, part of an old building, and there's another bit down there you see with the fog growing.
That's a very, very broad part of it too.
More
than likely was a building, okay.
That's right. That, believe it or not, is St Columkill's bed. Now, it's part of the big rock here itself, which gives Carrickmore its name. There is the bed, the well, which we'll see, and the chair. Now, there are all kinds of traditions and superstitions attached to that there, and St Columkill is reputed to have lain there and done penance there, and this stone here is for his pillow. As you can see, the people that do lie in it now are not as friendly or slightly more hostile than...
They're not even Irish.
They're not even Irish. You can see from the sweet papers and the cigarette packets and chocolate and that they have. But it's not very long since they had that actually roofed, and they were using it as a... Because if you look down here...
An observation post.
You're looking straight down here, you see.
What had the corrugated iron roof over it?
No, it was secretly roofed, you know. It was...
Is that right?
Oh, That wee well here is known as Columkill's well. It's a wart well. People come up here for cures for their warts, and they've been pennies and that type of thing.
And is it actually a spring, it is?
It never goes dry.
Never was dry, not even in that drought?
No, it never went dry. You can see there now that it's amazing here on the top of the rock that you would still have water on, isn't it?
On one of the highest points.
That's right.
Maybe the highest point.
You're well over the 600-foot contour here. And again, you see that they're always very well associated with a monastic settlement. And this is known as St Columkill's well. So we have been to St Columkill's bed as well. And the next one we're going over here to see is the chair, St Columkill's chair. When you get up on the top of the rock, I'll give you an account of where you are. You'll be able to... I'll give you your bearings.
I suppose for the sake of the people that'll be watching this, you better tell us what this monument here is.
This here is the traditional site of the bonfire, and there have been bonfires here as long as I can remember. I mean, even remember a bonfire here, God forgive us, in the past, for some great achievement by De Valera. He was elected president, or elected some achievement he had in the south, and the local people in their wisdom came up here to celebrate that victory. Whether it would happen now or not, I'm not too sure, but all down the years there has been the traditional bonfire here, and you can see the remains of earlier bonfires. The young fellows cart up tires here, and it might be a local person would won a victory in the local election. It might be, it used to be the old Stormont election, it might be Minster. It could be maybe bonfire night on the 23rd of June. This is the traditional site for the bonfire. So they carry up anniversary of internment, local achievements.
So there's at least one bonfire here every year.
Oh, at least
one.
At least one.
This particular one is to mark the 20th anniversary of British troops being moved into Northern Ireland.
That's exactly what it's for. And it's been well watched, I'm sure, from all sides at the minute. But anyhow, to get back to St. Columcille, you can see why it was picked as a spot. It's looking down on the whole countryside, and you can see there's a marvellous view from here. Looking out straight in front of you there, I was talking about earlier on, you can see Bernie's Glen over here. And that actually is the Pole Hill there that you can see over at Dunmoyle. You may know the Pole Hill.
Yeah, just north of Ballygolly.
That's right. And then the Ballygolly line would be beyond that. Now, if you travel in easterly direction, you're going on over there towards Kappa Mountain up there, the forest, that's all forested up there. And you're going on over here, the next wee hill up at the top, you'll see the sentry box, which is reputed to have been an outpost, an outlook post for Shane Berna, the highwayman who also was reputed to have connections with Bernie's Glen. And as you move on over by there, you're going over by Altmore and Gorton Garden, and then on out towards Pomeroy, in that direction there. So that's the view. Those trees might cover the view from there. The next, you see over here. Over in this direction here, you're looking over at Craig Mountain, and that is Skelp Mountain. And you're looking over there by Ivish and Orden, and then those mountains are the mountains down below Dunamore, Kildress. And the two peaks that you can see there in the distance are the two highest peaks in the Spurn Mountains, Sowell and Dart. The two mountains there. And then as you move on around here, of course, this is part of our own parish. This is Copney mountain that you're looking at here. And then down in there, that low country, you follow that, you're looking down at Loch McCrory. Beyond Loch McCrory you can see that forested area, that's Mountfield Forest. And then the mountains behind that is Mullaharn with the two television masts on it. That's Mullaharn, which slopes on down in towards Omagh in this direction here. And if you just could move over in this direction a wee bit here, we're looking west there, and beyond those hills there are the Donegal Mountains. Now, way down on the horizon here, beyond Brocher again, you're looking at that big ridge that starts below Enniskillen and takes you on down towards Bundoran. On a clear day, you can see those mountains there in Leitrim, way on down towards Sligo. So there is a fantastic view from here. But on a good day, it's very, very nice. But in harsh weather, it'd be very inhospitable, and certainly would be a challenge to anybody to be up here.
Visibility is not just in our today.
Did you get a shot of Fort Apache down here? And at the bed, this is the third example here of connection with St. Columcille. This is St. Columcille's chair, and there isn't that much tradition associated with it, as can't tell you that much about it in comparison to the bed or the chair, but it's one of the three. There's a good view here actually from the chair if you want to look down into the village of Carrickmore, and then you're looking down there on the Craigan Road in Quinn's Corner, and that building there at the corner actually is where the village is supposed to have originated. It's now Quinn's Bar, but that where the Craigan Road joins the main street now is where the village is supposed to have originated. The reason for it being there probably is the monastic settlement up there. The houses would have congregated around the church, but eventually they chose more sheltered spots down in that particular area there. And even looking at it from here, it isn't a kind of a hollow, even though it's at the top of the mountain. There's a certain amount of shelter, and that is why the village grew up there. You get a good view of the village from there, as I was saying. There's very little else I can tell you about this spot. You can see, looking down in this direction here, that is the Omer Road. The village is spreading out in that direction.
John?
What do you mean now, Barney?
You're going to catch me anyway. Get a bit closer.
I've got it closer.
Well, I guess that would be very... He's 48 years of age. Felix Kavanagh. Remember Felix Kavanagh?
What I?
He died in February 1840. Pray for that eternal repose of the souls of Reverend John McKeagney, PP Ahaloo, who died on the 25th of July 1901, aged 75 years, and of his brother, the Reverend Michael McKeagney, who died on the 27th of July 1876, aged 31 years. God rest the dead. The McKeagneys were a very influential family in this parish. In fact, the parish at one stage was called Termon McKeagney, and themselves and a family, McElduffs are very popular here yet, did battle, and the McElduffs defeated them in whatever kind of a battle it was. But eventually it reverted back to the name of Termon McGurk. But it used to be known as Termon McKeagney. There were so many of them. We Terry McKeagney would tell you stories about how famous they were, but it was out there in Grana. That was a stronghold of the McKeagneys. But there's a grave over here, Frank Ward's grave. It'd be worth photographing as well.
Whereabouts is it, Father?
Right here. This headstone here, this one was erected by the National Graves. This is the grave of volunteer Frank Ward. The headstone was erected by the National Graves Association. He died, he was killed in an ambush, or he was injured in an ambush at Donegal, and he died as a result of his wounds. And that, he was a native of Brockie, but the wards in this parish, you see there's a row of wards buried along there, and that is the Ward's burial ground. He's been buried in that spot there. Volunteer Frank Ward. Ah, that's Frank Canavan there. God rest poor Frank. Frank was shot.
When was he shot?
You know, he was shot by accident. He was shot. There was you remember he switched up, died in the school bus.
Set up by the Brits.
His first and only day on the bus. He was doing relief for some UD Armon or Reserve or something. That's right. White never missed a day.
This is the new end of the graveyard here. When was this part of the graveyard
This was done with the renovation.
Was it only very recently?
Have you seen this bit here, Barney? That's stone wall and all that's built around it. Do you remember what that used to be like there? You see, that the graveyard used to go over there, but then they took this stone ditch here and they built that way on down along there.